And
Welcome
we're live.
to the Weekly Pet Roundup. Hi, guys.
Hi. We are
Hello.
talking
How are
about,
you?
I know, I feel like it's been forever. It's only been a week, but I feel like it's been forever.
Yeah, well, we got to take advantage now before the summer gets crazy. So we have a great topic today, mostly dog related. I'm sure a lot of the advice we will give is definitely going to apply to cats and probably your rabbit and your, what else, your bird
Yeah.
acting out and stuff. But
Yeah.
welcome to the Weekly Pet Roundup. I'm Isabel Alvarez-Arata of Covered in Pet Hair, and joining me today is Jessica Fisher of the Pet Parenting Reset.
Yes, ma'am. So, we are talking about dog behavior problems, and so Texas A&M, it just is what
And
it
we have
is.
a barking dog in the background for effect.
For a fact, totally planned. Texas A&M posted more than 99% of U.S. dogs have behavior problems. Texas A&M researcher finds this was also posted like a full-length article in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior in the November-December 2024 issue. And that the study posted in the journal is called The Prevalence of Behavior Problems in Dogs in the United States, posted by Bonnie Beaver. I didn't make up that name. And she is obviously a researcher with Texas A&M, and she obviously knows what she's doing because she's publishing articles. So, yeah, this is to me really interesting. So we kind of alluded to it at the end of last week's episode. This study pulled data from over 43,000 dogs enrolled in the Dog Aging Project, which is nothing. I mean, we're fairly familiar, I think Isabel and I, because with the Dog Aging Project, because I think a lot of the information that Rodney Habib and Dr. Karen Becker talk about is also pulled from the Dog Aging. This is probably one of the biggest, like most expansive pieces of like data profiles ever on
On
dogs
dogs, yeah?
worldwide. I think yeah, and it's I believe it is worldwide, but they just pulled from the United States for this particular piece. And you can actually go to dogagingproject.org if you want to learn more about the Dog Aging Project. You can donate to it. You can actually enroll your dog potentially if you fit. I don't know how all of that works, but it says they are discovering the keys to a healthy lifespan. Obviously, that's what Karen and Rodney talk about all the time, not just quantity of life, but quality of life. And that is so important. And behavior, there's actually one part of this research that I found to be the most interesting. I'm going to save it for later on in our talk. But I mean, as a professional pet sitter, like you having been a professional pet sitter for so long, I'm sure, we talk about behavioral issues all the time. It's something that like you have seen day in and day out, like
Yes.
regardless of the situation, regardless of the number of dogs, regardless of where they live, regardless of if there's kids in the homes, if they're not kids in the homes, what they're eating, what their walk schedule, like it doesn't matter across the board, there are behavior problems.
Yeah, and actually, I will say that my clientele was like highly educated, very responsible. They were doing the best they possibly could for their dogs. They were in a financial place where they could afford dog training. For the most part, we had very successful professionals and families with disposable income, dual income families, um, who really could do anything they really wanted to a point for their dogs, and still we saw a lot of behavior issues. So it is definitely something that you can't really throw money at. That's the first thing I will say. Behavior issues are not going to go away with a pill. They are not always, you can't always tell that they're going to happen. when you're choosing a dog, a breeder, a rescue, you can't, there are no guarantees with the pet, no matter how you acquire them. I know that some people like to say that, if you get the perfect dog from the perfect breeder, you will have a perfect dog as far as behavior, and that is just not true. I mean, nature versus nurture, as much as they can, um, a really good breeder does use genetics and genetic testing to support the lineages that they choose. There's no way to know what you're going to get. Genetics it does its own thing. So you might be, breeding the best temperament, but you may not know what the history is there, or be able to control the history of separation anxiety. And you can't also control that perfect dog with perfect lineage and no separation anxiety won't develop it,
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So there are no guarantees, and that's a huge thing to think about when we talk about all this. Is that this is about dogs, just dogs. Um, Anybody who tells you that you have to get a specific dog, a specific breed, a specific long hair versus short hair versus wire hair to get a great dog is blowing smoke up your bottom. And it is really important to recognize that there's no preventing bad behaviors. In some cases, like separation anxiety can be made worse, but if your dog is genetically predisposed to separation anxiety and you just may not know that until they start showing signs, and not a lot of people really kind of do their due diligence. Maybe you could see a little sign here and there during the adoption process. Maybe you didn't ask about that stuff, but once your dog is showing these symptoms, they're your dog, they're staying with you, and now you have to respond. So feeling like you can throw a pill at it, it doesn't exist, throw money at it, that's not going to work. Really, when it comes to these behavior problems, the solution usually starts with you as the pet parent.
Well, and you have no way of knowing how any individual dog is going to respond to any stressor that comes about in their lifetime. Um, we do know that um, the gut microbiome is very much like the gut brain axis is real. The gut microbiome absolutely can determine how an animal behaves, how an animal reacts to um, stressors, to anything going on in their environment. So, just like a dog that was quote unquote perfectly behaved at a breeder's home, right? With when they were with their siblings, when they were with their mother, and then they're taken away from everything they knew. I saw a meme one day, or a reel or something. It was um, like we literally just kidnapped these animals from the only family they've ever known, and we're like, we're your family now,
We're
right?
your family
Like we
now
have,
and pee outside. Don't go there.
yes,
You're doing it wrong.
yes. And so, yeah, I hear that all the time too. Like all the time. People who have like an affinity to a certain breed of dog, it doesn't really matter what breed of dog it is. They just are like so steadfast in their belief that you have to get a purebred dog and that is going to be like the solution to every problem everybody ever has with the dog. Like, that is
Mm-hmm.
so not the case.
No.
Just like you said, it is absolutely not the case. And yeah, maybe they have had fewer stressors in their life being bred. You don't know, especially if like you're not doing your due diligence and you're getting from like a backyard breeder or something. But maybe, a really wonderful, incredible breeder out there and you're getting your dogs from them. You still, like, you have no way of there's no way to decide that that dog isn't going to react to, even though it's maybe fewer stressors in their life versus a dog who was born on the street and wound up in a shelter and then wound up in a
Yeah.
rescue. Like some of those dogs have incredible temperaments. It's not
Right.
it's not 100% genetic. There's a lot of epigenetics involved in both health and behavior, and we just don't just like with humans, you can have a human, two humans, and they do, they do twin studies to show these things that grew up exactly the same. Their DNA is identical, and yet they have two very different responses to the same stimulus.
Absolutely.
It's the same with dogs. We
Well,
can't.
yeah, speaking of my experience as a pet sitter, I remember having this client who had a yellow lab, like the sweetest yellow lab, who like lived to 16. And of course, once that lab was gone, she had to have another female yellow lab. I don't believe that the breeder was around anymore, so she couldn't go back to that lineage. She found a great breeder, blah, blah, blah. The dogs could not have been any different, like any more different. Like they were completely different. And she was actually really disappointed by the second dog because she was expecting to get the exact same dog that had passed. And so this happens a lot where people are like, my soul dog was a Doberman Pinscher, and now I can only have Doberman Pinschers, and I'm going to be so disappointed when, that next dog is not the same temperament, even if you get it from the same breeder and lineage as your soul dog who changed your life. And I get it. Like, it's hard to recognize that was a one being that you
Yeah.
had probably some sacred contract with that really made an impression, and you're not going to be able to duplicate that, not with genetics, not with the breeder, not with anything. And the most important thing is when you think about how things have changed, especially let's say in the case of my client who had a 16-year difference between when her first dog was born and her second dog. Dog food has changed, the
Yeah.
environment has changed,
Very
stressors
much
in
so.
the environment have changed. She has changed. Her energy has changed. Her socialization approach may have changed. So much has changed. So even if you were to clone that original dog and just bring her 16 years into the future, you don't know you're going to get that same result, right? Because everything around that dog has changed. So one of the things that I think is so important when we talk about behavior issues is the recognition that those first 8 to 12 weeks of life are so important for socialization. And people hear socialization and they think like doggy play dates, and that is not at all what it is. Whether or not your dog is predisposed to separation anxiety, barking, herding because of their genetic makeup, when you expose them to stimuli, whether it's noise, storms, touch, other dogs, other humans, other pets like cats, whether you do that in the beginning of their life or not, whether you travel with them during that time, taking them to new places, and even if you pass that initial 12, 18 weeks, I mean, depending on who you ask, there's different lengths for different things, but even if you pass that initial week, let's say 12, 15 weeks, the first 2 years they're going to be a lot more adaptable than they are potentially the first 5 years versus the first 10 years. And so everything that we do to kind of prevent these behavior issues that we're going to talk about is really only in our control if we have the dog from day one and everything goes perfectly. Because even if we're socializing a dog just at the right period, we might overstimulate them. We might scare the heck out of them with a noise. Like the trash truck comes by and that dog will forever be scared of the trash truck. You might get a dog who's 2 years old from a rescue and they're happy-go-lucky, and then something traumatic happens and now they're scared of whatever it is that they relate to that traumatic experience. So there's really no guarantee to how we can prevent these behavior issues. We can set them up for success with socialization during those key periods, yes. And if you are getting a puppy, you need to be aware of those key periods. If you have a dog under 5, you can still really usually socialize and recondition and things like that. When you have an older dog like my Kira, who's 14, I'm not going to recondition anything. I'm going to manage now, right? I'm going to make sure that I make it so that she's not more afraid of things she already has a fear of. So recognizing your dog's age, their developmental periods, yes, their genetics, which we have no control over, and all the unknowns, right? We don't know before we get them from a breeder what that experience was like, especially if you're not doing your due diligence and you don't know what questions to ask. You don't know
Yeah.
how they were whelped. You don't know what they were like, what training they got, because there's some really great breeders who start potty training from day one, right? Like, they're starting to do socialization from day one, touching them, moving them, fiddling with their toenails, all those things on purpose, initially still in the breeder's home. Then there are other people who just have them in cages and they're completely ignored until you buy them, and now that dog at 8 weeks hasn't done anything, hasn't seen anything but their initial experience with the litter mates.
Yeah.
They're lucky if they even spent time with their mom. So we don't have a lot of control over the things that happen before we get our dogs. We do have control based on their age, their willingness, their personality, their temperament, and our time too. Because a lot of, like I said, there's no throwing money at this. There's no magic pill. Behavior issues are solved with consistency and compassion and understanding and a heck of a whole lot of patience.
My gosh, yes. And interestingly, in the actual study that was posted in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior, they also reference a Spanish survey, which was only 232 dogs entering a veterinary hospital for either medical or surgical services not related to behavior. And it was estimated that 92% of those dogs had some kind of behavioral problem as well. Also, an Iranian study of 401 dogs showed 86% showed at least one of the 13 common behavioral problems. Danish survey of 502 dog owners reported 34% of the dogs showed at least one behavioral problem. So it's not necessarily like worldwide. Like Spanish was pretty close to us. Even the Iranian was similar, but then like the Danish
Danish
survey,
is really low,
yeah,
yeah. Well, and
really,
I
really
also
low.
think that these surveys, we have to recognize that some people in some cultures are going to see things differently. So, like, we might be like, we're so busy and we're
Yeah,
so like easily irritated by little things that are out of our control that maybe we think that 99% of our dogs have behavior issues, where a Spaniard might look at that or a Dane might look at that and be like, it's not a big deal, depending on the culture, depending on the expectations and the standards. So, separation anxiety is something that is a spectrum, right? So somebody who says, yes, for sure, there's separation anxiety. Maybe a Spaniard says, oh yeah, they whine when I get home, but that's not separation anxiety, right? So like, but here in the United States, according to this result, it is 99% of dogs in the United States show behaviors that are potentially problematic, with the top categories being aggression, 55.6%, separation anxiety, and separation and attachment behaviors. They don't use the word anxiety. Separation and attachment behaviors, 85.9%, and fear and anxiety behaviors, 49.9%.
yeah.
Okay, so they're separating separation and attachment behaviors from fear and anxiety behaviors, which often are roped in together. Like, I know Kira has both.
Yeah.
Kira has separation anxiety because when we get home, she's a wreck, even if I just went down the street for 5 minutes. She's so excited that we're home. That's a key sign that, they were anxious while you were gone. They're not exactly happy to see you as we mostly interpret it. It's oftentimes that's like, oh my God, you're back. What was I going to do without you?
Yeah.
And then she has also fear and anxiety behaviors, in that she's scared of noise. She's noise phobic. She's scared of any kind of like, when we talk loud, she gets very, very scared. She is scared of wind. Any changes in barometric pressure send her into like shakes. So she is, obviously, she displays both of those things. Thankfully, she does not display aggression, but I found the result for aggression high, 55.6%. And that is more than half of the dogs in the United States.
Yeah.
And I will say that from the sample at the WAG pack, I would say that doesn't seem in line with my clients, and maybe that's because they were so educated and they did maybe do a lot of like the early socialization, and we lived in an urban environment, so the dogs were inevitably, you know, socialized to noises and to other dogs and to other humans, and a lot of people lived in condos and townhomes right next to others, so maybe just automatically they just got used to those things. But it did seem high, 55.6% for aggression.
Well, and yeah, and that sample that you're pulling from, these are people who are aware enough, as you've just stated, they are aware enough to know that their pet needs socialization outside of them, especially if they work long hours. And that is not the case for the
Correct.
majority of pets in the United States and probably
Unfortunately.
around the world. Yeah. But go and I think we should touch on the aggression a little bit more, and the separation and the anxiety. But I did want to kind of go back to what you were saying about like how do we know like how these people are actually. I feel so washed out today. I'm just like looking at myself, going, "What is wrong?" Um, anyway, like we don't know like how people are really responding to these questionnaires, and I think they tried to touch on that as much as possible by giving people time. They talked about how like if you're just talking to like your veterinarian is asking you questions, which is something I want to talk about a little bit later on, the whole veterinarian part of this, because that's a whole other topic in my opinion. um, like you're just answering questions, spitballing off the top of your head, you're probably not going to come up with a lot of the answers that are relevant to a study like this. But what they're saying is that they gave people a questionnaire and they gave them time to think about it. And I think they also followed up because it says, as an example, I once saw a miniature poodle that came in for a problem with barking. This is a quote from a veterinarian. I'm sorry, the lady who did the research. In the patient's history, I found out that the dog would routinely urinate on a Persian rug, but that behavior didn't bother the owner as much as the barking. So she was actually like going through the researcher was going through veterinary records to say like, does this match up with the reports that the pet parents are giving to us,
Right.
because they're finding other things, because obviously, you know, what's a problem to one person it may not be a problem to another person. For example, my dog is on my couch right now and she sleeps in bed with me, whereas another person may be like, that is absolutely asinine, dogs do not belong in the bed sleeping with you, you know what I mean? So like
My
those.
dogs don't get on the couch or sleep in the bed. Like
Yeah.
it's just something I don't enjoy. My cat
Yeah.
does whatever he wants. But
Yeah.
that's a whole other conversation. Yeah, so Dulcie's Legacy says, are we allowed to call it neurotic? Yes, so anxiety, yeah, I think neuroses is probably something our pets exhibit, absolutely. I know I've referred to Kira, my apologies, Kira, as neurotic. Nucky being a singleton, he's high anxiety. Elle is just off the charts because someone breathed. Yeah, and every dog has its own kind of triggers, and every pet parent has different levels of being able to recognize that. So like
Mm-hmm.
Dulcie's Legacy, Bronwyn, obviously highly educated in pet dog behavior, dog body language, whatever. A general pet parent who maybe has their first dog is not going to know that just people breathing sets their dog off. But
Yeah.
the idea is that when this research is done, obviously they guide them as best they can. Um, and there's surveys, right? So like it's not really like being observed by the
Yeah.
researchers.
Yeah.
So it's hard to really say like, yeah. I mean, I've even seen it with my pets where they're like, people are like, oh, he's fine, he's friendly, and I'm like, he'll bite you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just because you've seen it for 30 minutes doesn't mean that he is friendly. He hasn't bitten
Yeah.
you this 30 minutes, but give him, on another day he might. So yeah, it's something that we can take from the survey, what we take, but obviously in every one of these surveys that they do, they want to make sure they get the most accurate answers in order for it to be like, why do it if you're going to get crappy answers, right? And what they did describe, like the behaviors and aggression. For example, they asked about growling, snapping, and biting. Um, the cause was not known why, but at least they could recognize, like, yes, my dog has displayed that behavior.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to go back to what we were talking about earlier in genetics, it this study does show that it says the prevalence of breed related behaviors and the prevalence of problems are not globally consistent. So in a pretty large sample size, over 47,000 dogs, they're saying there is no consistency with behavior problems and breed. So that whole like get this breed of dog and they're perfect is just out the window.
No, I remember that I interviewed Milena DiMartini,
Mm-hmm.
the foremost expert on dogs, separation anxiety in
Separation.
dogs,
Mm-hmm.
in like 2021 or 2022, and then I had her back on the show last year, and the findings had changed. Like at first she was like,
Yeah.
maybe there's a genetic link, and then when she spoke to me last year, she was like, yeah, we're not that convinced anymore, just because there isn't enough research, and when there is research, it's a small sample, so it's like hard to tell. And I mean, nobody really wants to think about how hard it would be to like really do a test, a separation anxiety research on every single breed out there and in every
Oh
single
yeah.
situation. Like it'd be really hard to do. So we kind of just take what we can, based on, we don't have all the answers, but this is kind of, that's why we have things like the recommendations where socialization should start early,
Yeah.
and aggression is going to, we talked about dog bites last week. That's why we have the scale, so that you know how serious this is, so you can address it. Because if we rely solely on research, I just don't know when we'll get all that done, and
Yeah.
who's going to pay for it.
And speaking of, so we talked about dog fights last week, and you sent me. I don't remember how many states it was. It was a good handful of states have the like first bite rule now.
Yes, the first bite rule. So this we didn't discuss last week, but the first bite rule is basically the dog cannot like be euthanized or held severely responsible for the first bite that causes, like, that breaks skin, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
So that is, something that we didn't discuss, but I mean, I guess that many dogs are biting, right?
Yeah.
That we needed to legally state that, like, the first bite, we'll let it go because dogs are dogs,
Yeah.
and dogs can bite, and we know that. But after that,
Yeah.
your dog's gonna
Well,
get in trouble, so you better do something about it.
and that brings up a really, really, really important part of this conversation is that dogs are dogs. And that too many of us, in my opinion, I know, I don't know if he's still here, but one of uh, Brian, I'm going to say his name wrong. I'm going to say his last name wrong. It's like Band of Fast or something like that. Anyway, he's very, very knowledgeable, very educated person who spends a lot of time helping educate people on social media. So props to him for everything he does. Seriously, like really, a really great person. And he was kind of chiming in on the fact that so many of us are we're anthropomorphizing our animals, and it is causing serious problems for them where they wind up with these serious issues, and then they wind up on, you know, really serious medications because of things that we've ultimately probably caused
Cost.
in their lives.
Or
And or
perpetuated.
yeah, or made worse, because we never know what causes, what starts something like separation anxiety, right? Like that's hard, especially when we don't know a dog's history. It's like hard to know where
We
that
know how to
actually came
cause it
from
if we wanted to.
if we
We know
want
how to
to,
cause it if we wanted to. You want to
for
cause
sure.
separation anxiety, you leave your dog crated for way too long, leave
Yeah.
him alone for way too long, you're going to cause separation
Yeah.
anxiety. And it doesn't take more than maybe one bad experience for them to be like, oh no, it's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
again. I'm crated, I can't pee, nobody's here, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
So we know how to give it to them, but we definitely don't know how subtle these things can be. We don't know how long into that experience they developed separation anxiety. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we don't really know. But
Yeah. And it's one of the things that like we talk about so much. I know me for sure. I talk about food and feeding them like the species they are so much. And I don't talk enough about treating them like the species they are. Like, you know, making sure they're getting enough enrichment and outdoor time, making sure that they are being like, yes, they live in our homes with us, but we are asking them, often demanding of them, that they act in ways that we want them to act living in our home, and they have no idea how to do that. Like, we're not giving them the roadmap for how to live in a home with people. We're just saying, you live here now and you should know how to do all this, and they don't. They're a totally different species. They are not adapt to live the way we live. They don't want to be trapped inside with, you know, air that isn't circulating, with with these chemicals that you're putting on the floor to clean your home, the off gassing from couches and rugs and carpet. Like, these are things that they would never choose for themselves, and yet we're at. And can you imagine, like, I recently went somewhere, and the like it was pretty normal. Of like, the home was pretty normal. I think an average American home, that they use Febreze and they have candles burning in the house, and it wasn't like overly crazy. It wasn't like walking into a Bath and Body Works, but like 2 days in, and I feel like I'm getting sick. Can you imagine what this tiny little 9 pound, 10 pound creature may feel like when they are put in that same environment? And
Yeah.
it's something we don't often think of, that like maybe they are totally fine. Maybe they actually don't have any behavioral problems, but they feel like shit. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, we do a lot of that. We do a lot of that. Think about just the aggression, like putting a
Mm-hmm.
dog in an elevator with other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have we ever thought about how uncomfortable that might be for them, coming face to face with an unfamiliar dog in their territory? Because if they're going up and down that elevator every day, they're going to,
Yeah.
expect that that's their territory. And unless they've been properly introduced to other dogs and they've smelled them before, this might be perceived as a threat. And then now we are calling them aggressive because they lunged at that dog who like looked at them funny. They were on edge because they're on an elevator, which is already an unnatural place for a dog to be, especially if
Yeah.
they weren't, socialized to it early in life. And now we're expecting them to also be like, yo, what's up? Like, they weren't given that, like, the manners course of you go into an elevator, you don't speak, you nod your head,
Mm-hmm.
you put your button. They didn't get that training. And, like, a lot of urban environments, you see that with, like, all these dogs together crossing each other on the sidewalk. And, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's, the dogs that were born and raised into that situation maybe super cool with it. You see that a lot in Europe, where most people live in urban environments, so the dogs are used to, being up and down stairs and sidewalks together. But you bring a dog from like West Virginia, which is something that we did a lot in Northern Virginia. Bring a dog from West Virginia, was found, on the road somewhere rural, and you're bringing them to an urban environment and expecting them to just adapt.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. You're not setting them up for success. And obviously that's where the adopters are. So we need to obviously bring them there. But how are we setting them up for success if we're just throwing them to the wolves and we're unprepared? Like, the pet parent who's adopting them is not prepared for how to properly introduce these experiences.
Yeah, it is. It's so much more than I think most people think about. And also, as an animal ages, just like as a human ages, we are less willing to deal with bullshit. We just are. And we have to understand that our pets are the same way. I talk about this a lot with cats. I talk about it less with dogs, but the same thing is true. Like, they may act as if everything is totally fine for most of their lives, and then as they get older, they're just less willing to deal with stuff that makes them uncomfortable. And then you see the snapping and the parking their butts on the ground, refusing to move because they're just done with it. Like, these things, we 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 call behavior problems, but they're really not. They are just dogs saying, I'm sick of this. I'm a dog. I'm not a human. You have not set me up for success. You have not given me the tools that I need to be able to navigate this world that you live in the way that you want me to. And I'm just done. I'm just done with
Yeah.
it.
Fight, flight, or
Yeah.
freeze. They're going to choose one of those things because they are often in survival mode. We've introduced them to things and places they don't understand. They have no idea what the appeal is of going to a resort hotel for a
Yeah.
week and like
Yeah.
exploring there. Most of them are like, I don't get it. One of the quotes that I really like from the article from that we're looking at is animals think, but they probably don't think like we do.
Yeah.
So what we see is this really great opportunity to do spring. I'm using spring break as an example. We took Kira, who was our only dog at the time, and the cat, Van Gogh, to Phoenix, and with the kids, and obviously we drove there, and the cat's like in his carrier, like what are we doing, right? Like why am I still in this carrier? And we get there to this great resort, and now it's probably a pet friendly hotel room, so it smells like other pets,
Mm-hmm.
and they're both coming in like, what is this place? And now we have to like, figure out where to put their litter box and their water bowls and their this and their that, and they're like, what are we doing? And for us it's like vacay.
Yeah.
So from our perspectives it's so different. Just like I'm going down to the mailbox for 10 minutes and I stop and I say hi to my friend down the street. Kira's in here being like, she's gone forever, what if she never comes back?
Yeah.
And it's the same situation, just seen so differently. And then what we see is these behaviors that are usually caused by something they can't control, right? Like the anxiety leads to chewing, destructive scratching, either from a dog or a cat. You're talking about like, urinating inside. A lot of dogs self-soothe by drinking too much water, and then they'll need to go quicker than you thought, so you're not home yet, and they're urinating on your floor. They literally have like their bowels and their bladder can't be controlled because of the anxiety they feel, right? Like they become incontinent from the fear, the panic that they're experiencing, and we're mad at them for the urination or defecation in our house. And really they're just like, I could not control that. Like I know I'm supposed to go outside. Like I would have done that if I had been given the opportunity.
Yeah.
But you were gone for the whole day and you were here all weekend, so I have to readjust every Monday
Yeah.
to you leaving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's always the people who say, my dog hates when I leave and like they pee when I'm gone. And it's like, but do they hate when you leave because they're like mad that you left? Or do they just not understand that you're coming back? Did they have a bad experience that makes them fear that you're not coming back? Did they, did they have an uncomfortable experience in their crate and now you're crating them while you're gone?
Yeah.
Do they have a history of having been left alone in a previous life, a previous home, right? Like where you adopted them later in life. So all these things, your dog's not spiting you.
Yeah. And it's like, so my dog Kim, she had separation anxiety when we adopted her. I don't know what happened to her in her first 2.5 years of life. I know that she was in a foster home with way too many dogs in the rescue. And I know that I worked with her a lot. She did get better. It never went away. Like I don't know a dog that has gone away in. I mean, I know I followed Milena De Martini's book. Like I did everything. It was my introduction into dog training was her book on separation anxiety, and I did everything, and it got better. And then when with my life situation and everything that has happened this year, she has just spiraled. It has gotten so much worse, and I don't blame her for that. Her life, I mean, our life has been turned upside down this year, and I can't blame her for that, but I can, like, people do,
Yeah.
you know?
Life changes. Life changes. A move.
Yeah.
A move for humans, a move is just as traumatic as a death. A move, like just like a physical move from one house to another. Granted, I feel like the military, I feel like if you're moving every 2 to 3 years, you probably get used to it on some level, even though I'm not discrediting how stressful that is. But like, it's not like you have a death every 3 years now that you've been doing it for 20 years. But for those people who say like they have lived in one home for, however long, and now you're moving, and it's just as disruptive to like the central nervous system as a loss or a huge like trauma,
Yeah.
because it's so much. It's so much to handle. It's so many things to coordinate. It's just like physical, mental, spiritual changes that are happening. And that's us choosing it. That's us calling the movers.
Yeah.
So think about when it's completely out of the pet's control,
Yeah.
right?
They have no idea. They just know
This
your
was done
anxiety.
to me. Yeah, like this was done to me. One day I'm in this house that I've been in for 5 years, and then now I'm in this other house. It smells different, it looks different, it feels different. When we moved from Louisiana to El Paso, the climate, the landscape was completely different. Like until we got to our house, there was no grass anywhere.
Yeah.
So Kira's now learning how to pee on rocks and gravel, which she had never done because we were in Louisiana or Northern Virginia where grass was everywhere, right? So all of these things that were just like, nah, she didn't want to walk on the rocks at first. She was like, that hurts my feet. I don't like that. And so it was like she didn't pee for like 8 hours. We would get her out and then she finally got used to it. But it was those things that where, yeah, like if she had peed in the hotel room, would I have gotten mad at her? No, because I'm educated enough to know that she's having a hard time figuring out what to do. The next step was going to be literally going to buy one of those patches of grass and bring it inside or something.
Yeah.
But we put our pets into these situations, and then we call them aggressive, we call them anxious, we call them all these things. And like there are things that obviously we can't control either. Like if there is an anxiety related to noise and there's fireworks or there's a thunderstorm, like we can't control that, but we can manage that, and we could try to alleviate that through training. But when it comes to like aggression, we can control a lot of those things. Like when a dog bites a child, why was the child even near the dog? Where was the management, right? When a dog who has shown snapping or growling signs, being made uncomfortable by XYZ situation, is being repeatedly put in those situations, those are the times when we can say that was a human error, that was not the dog, and we need to listen more to the dogs so that we can prevent these behaviors. And then there are times when you really do need to get professional help immediately, like a dog with separation anxiety where they are tearing apart your home. They can't be crated because they're a danger to themselves, but then they can't be left in a room because they'll eat the comforter, and you're down to like nothing in your room and they're eating the drywall. This is, these things happen. So like at that point, this needs to become like a super important part of your life where you dedicate time, patience, compassion, understanding, and a lot of potentially money into fixing this problem, because your best dog trainers are not going to do this for free. And there's a lot of liability involved in these extreme behaviors, right? Like your dog trainer should have insurance in case, something that they tell you to do results in something that you didn't want as an outcome. So those things, when it comes to that point where it's affecting your life and the pet's life, that's when you need to get this immediate attention from a professional dog trainer, like now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we only have like 15 minutes left, and I wanted to bring up something that I felt was very contradictory and very important for us to talk about, because of course it brings me right back around to what I'm most comfortable talking about. So it says for dog owners, it's important to learn to read your dog's body language and talk to your local veterinarian if there is any type of behavior happening that bothers you. They can help you identify the cause and find a solution. However, it also says some studies report that only 50% of veterinarians ask questions about behavior during appointments, and owners may not think to ask the veterinarian about something they don't like. What this to me says is that pet parents are aware, at least to some degree, maybe not all of them, maybe some of it is subconscious. But to me, what this is saying is that, first of all, I know as a professional that veterinarians, generally speaking, are not trained to help people with behavior problems. I know
Unless
that.
they're caused by
Unless,
a physical ailment. Right?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. If they're caused by something painful in the body, if there's some disease process causing an issue, some sort of, pressure on the brain, or, who knows. Yes, they can,
Incontinence, yeah.
yeah, they
Like,
can
yeah.
identify, yes, they can identify things that are physical in nature. But what this is kind of saying to me is like, people understand, even if it's subconsciously, that veterinarians are not equipped to handle behavioral issues.
Yeah.
And generally speaking,
And
again,
I
if
would
it if
think,
it has to do,
especially now with the rise of dog training online
mm-hmm,
on social media, like all we see of, this dog trainer and that dog trainer. And like, I mean, I hate to give Cesar Millan any credit for anything, but he is
bring
the
it to the
first dog
masses.
trainer that people
Yeah,
recognized as a career, as a profession. So he
yeah,
did do that. I didn't like his approach, but he and Victoria Stillwell and a few others, that were kind of like the original dog trainers on TV, they did make it so that we recognize that there's a difference between the medical professional and the behavior professional, even though one does go to school. And then there are
mm-hmm,
obviously veterinary behaviorists, but most people don't know about those unless
yeah,
they're referred to one.
yeah, and they are hard to find.
Yeah.
My kind of hope in this is that people also start realizing that veterinarians are not equipped for preventive care, and they're not equipped for nutrition. Like, that's my big one. They are not equipped for nutrition unless, again, like a veterinary behaviorist, they go out and seek additional education outside of their veterinary degree, their
Yeah.
veterinary license. So that's kind of where like my mind went as I was reading this. It's like, oh, that's interesting that we do, even if it's subconsciously, kind of recognize that veterinarians aren't equipped to handle behavior, but like, we are not yet realizing that they're not equipped to handle nutrition questions. Um, and
Well,
I
I've
just,
never been asked by a vet about my pet's behavior, to be honest with you. I've gone to them with Socks had
issues.
like crystals in her urine when she was a puppy and she was peeing all over. So I went with a behavior concern. I go with a behavior concern like when Radar had some kind of neurological issue. I went saying this is the behavior I'm seeing and I think it's time to say goodbye. We go to them with behavior issues that we know are caused by some kind of health issue,
Physical
right? Because
ailment.
like,
Yeah.
because Socks knew to pee outside,
Mm-hmm.
but she would pee every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was like there was obviously a medical issue, right? So if we're somewhat educated on human health, we kind of go to those conclusions. But when I think about my like talks with vets, the only vet that's ever asked me what my pets eat was one that was prescribing prescription diets
Mm-hmm.
for Socks with the
Yeah.
incontinence, or my veterinarian who came to the house and we told her we do a homemade raw, and she asked so that she could get more clarity on what we did and how we handled it. And she was at my house, so we showed her the whole process and how we kept things clean. But I mean, I've been a pet parent since 2008. Like my own adult, as an adult, almost 20 years. And what else have I? Nutrition, no. Behavior, never. I mean, never. Like, we've gone with Satchmo to say he bites when people touch him around this area,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
that I know could be physical. But yeah, no, I've never been asked about just like a regular, at any age, whether my pets were 4 months when I got Titan or Satchmo's 10. I've never been asked like,
Yeah.
how does he
Well, and
walk
I,
on a leash, and how does he respond to other dogs, and how does
mm-hmm.
he behave when strangers come over. Like, no, never.
Mm-hmm. And I do think, I mean, I definitely see it on social media. People want to avoid the veterinarian at all cost, and they don't attribute behavioral issues with medical issues nearly as often as they should.
Yeah.
Um, we always, any new behavior that your pet is exhibiting is a reason to go to your veterinarian, so that they can either say, yes, there is a physical reason for this happening, or no, there isn't. And then you can go down the behavioral issue.
Yes.
I mean, the behavioral route.
Yes.
That is something I do think that pet parents are not really great about.
Yes.
It's like they don't want to quote waste money. It's not a waste of money to get a diagnosis. Um, would it be a waste of money to just throw prescriptions at it? Maybe. Yeah. Yeah. So be a discerning pet parent
Yeah.
and say, I'm here for a diagnosis. And
Yeah.
then I'm going, if it's not an emergency, take that information back home with you. Think about it, research it, figure out what's going to be best for you and your pet. Is behavior modification the first thing you want to do instead of throwing Prozac at something?
Yeah.
Probably, right?
Well, I mean, and it depends on the age too.
Yeah.
Like at 14 years old, maybe you do want to throw Prozac at it for quality of life. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for me, it's always like when you start noticing a change, if it's like a big change, like your dog bit somebody overnight and they're maybe 10, 12, that is a really good indication that they could be in pain and defensive, right? They've never
Yeah.
bit before and all of a sudden they're biting. Like, whoa. That's so quick. You need to go straight to the vet. You need to call and you need to like kind of pressure them to get you in soon because that situation can escalate. But let's say that your dog's pacing a little bit, right, at night. They get up, they pace a little bit, they look a little confused. Maybe that's not urgent, but maybe you can observe them for a week. Call the vet and say, this is what I'm observing. If it becomes more frequent or it becomes and it's coupled with like vomiting or releasing their bowels or whatever, then now you're calling and saying, hey, I need to get in sooner. But there's a lot that we can kind of observe before we go to the vet, but not immediately just discard the vet. Like
Yeah.
knowing that behaviors often are, we've talked about this so much, like even with the dog bite conversation, where like dogs, they're gonna bite if they're in pain, 100%,
Yep.
but they're gonna avoid the bite as much as they
It's,
can. They don't
mm-hmm.
want to
Yeah.
start arguments with humans or with other dogs, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. So if you see that they've gotten to that point where they are urinating inside and that's not something that they've done before, they are defecating inside. Like last night, Satchmo woke me up at 5 in the morning to go out. He needed to go to the bathroom. He didn't go out after dinner. We fed him kind of late. We were at the movies. So I know that that was just, he didn't get to go at night. And like by the time 5 a.m. rolled around, he was ready to go out. But if he's waking me up every single night needing to go out and it's like soft stool, now that there's a problem, there might be a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
having that kind of like moment to take a pause and think about what's happening, you can figure out whether it could be physical, a veterinary thing, or a dog trainer thing. But most dog trainers will refer you to the vet first. Most
They
good dog
should.
trainers will be
Yeah.
like, you're telling me he's doing this and when is he doing it and da 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 and when was the last time he did it and how old is he and when was his last his last blood work or whatever, and they'll be like, you know what, before we work together you need to go to the vet,
Yeah.
because they know that a lot of this stuff can come from just like you said at the beginning, just feeling like
Yeah.
crap.
And one thing I have done is, and because you brought up the like pacing at night, I mean, fortunately, we have so much more knowledge now. Like, not all veterinarians will, but generally speaking, especially in like the healthy pet space, we know like mushrooms are excellent for cognitive health. And we can implement these things on our own without seeking veterinary assistance. But one thing that I have done, um, if I'm like really unsure, but I know it's not an emergency, is I will call the vet and I will say, this is what I'm seeing. I know that like I'm not ready to bring my animal in. I don't feel like it's an emergency. I feel like this is something I need to wait and see. But can you tell me what I should be looking for, because if X happens, I know I need to call and make
Right.
an appointment. And
Right.
they'll kind of advise you in that way.
Yes.
Um, they may or may not be happy about having to take the time for that phone call, but hopefully you have a really
A
great
vet that will
veterinary
do that.
practice.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, and the thing is, you should be going to the vet annually at some point in their life. You should be going semi-annually,
Hmm.
so twice a year. You should be, kind of keeping up with what, like follow-ups. Like, so
Yeah.
if your dog had like high kidney levels, you should be following up within 3 months, maybe with a phone call. My vet's wonderful. I mean, it's not her calling me, but they do call after
Yeah.
every appointment, being like, how's the medicine working? Is it working? Is it not? And most of the time it's yes, it's fantastic. All's cleared up, whatever. But if it's not, then obviously the vet will either ask me to come back in or call me. And I'd rather, when it comes to, like you said, preventive, I'd rather be in charge of that myself, where I force myself to take my dogs every year. Now it's more often because they're older. But like Van Gogh's going to go once a year. He's like 2 or 3. I can't remember. I can't do math. The past few years have like they're all meshed together, but he only goes once a year, and if he doesn't go at the year and he's doing great and there's no changes, I don't worry about like going at 14 months or whatever just because we got busy. But when it comes to a dog with a chronic disease or who's aging, cognitive decline is something that I think a lot of pet parents don't know about, don't understand, and can't really recognize until it's kind of really affected quality of life. And so that's why one of the things that you and I always talk about is making sure you're staying on those every 6 month or every year appointments, especially as your dog gets old, because that is maybe when your vet will ask you, like, is there any pacing at night? Are they still eating? Are they still willing to go for a walk? Do they look kind of wobbly in the morning? What about arthritis or whatever?
Yeah.
Because that's it's on their radar. It's harder when it's like an adult dog who may be presenting with issues and there's no physical reason for it to happen, but there could be a trauma. And I think that what we're both saying is when it comes to like behaviors caused by trauma, which we all have, I don't think veterinarians are going to most veterinarians are going to have the expertise on that because their focus is behavior and health related things. And again, veterinarians have to learn all animal species outside of humans, and they have to learn all specialties basically. Yeah. So they're not going to know about your dog's trauma and how it's affecting them every day. So that's why we have, Milena Di Martini, who specializes in separation anxiety, Michael Shikashio, who specializes in aggression. There's a lot of puppy experts who are going to set your puppy up for success to prevent a lot of these. Dale Ward is one of my favorites to refer to, and she actually wrote a book called Raising the Worst Dog Ever because she did it all wrong. Her book is her first dog that she trained. That dog is why she's a dog trainer, and that's why she, now works with puppies so much, is setting them up for success for a life where they don't have as many traumas because they're better prepared to adapt to our world. But I think this is so cool that we're actually taking the time to talk about this, because I think the more people recognize that we need to stop like just letting our dogs live according to our needs.
Yeah.
The more we realize that these behaviors are common and treatable, the more we realize that it falls on us to do the right thing, the better, right? So like when we see that 99% of dogs show some kind of behavior issue in the United States, at least we can say like there's a community of us who get it. And we can all do our part to help these dogs do better, cope better, adjust better. And we have to recognize that that's not going to happen overnight. And maybe it'll teach, people who are thinking about getting dogs that it's a big responsibility. Like there's a very good chance that your dog is going to have an issue, and you need to be prepared to handle it and manage it and address it.
Well, not only a very good chance that your dog is going to have an issue, but a very good chance that you are causing an issue for your dog. And not like, I'm not saying that in a like be mean to you kind of way. Like, is it my fault that I moved and my dog is now regressing? I mean, in a way, but also like I don't have to beat myself up over that.
Don't take that on. Don't take that on. Is it your fault that, is it my fault that Kira is more anxious than she would be if I gave her more exercise for her breed? Yeah, like I know that her breed needs a lot of exercise and a lot of outlets, right? Mm-hmm. Am I giving her enough outlets? Probably not.
Yeah.
So yes, that's my fault. And like that is the fault of a lot of us. That's a very common fault. That's one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about dog walkers. Dog walkers to me are such an underutilized resource for dog parents, because if you find the right dog walker, not only will they tailor their services to your dog's energy levels and fitness needs and breed demands, they're going to, come over and make sure that your puppy gets potty trained properly, efficiently, right? That it doesn't take a year, it'll take 3 months, because there's going to be consistency. There's going to be, you could work together to say, I want my dog jogged. Like, I need my dog jogged while I'm at work, not just walked around the block. That's not enough for my, Siberian Husky. So
Yeah.
those are resources that are so underutilized. And if you cannot afford a dog walker, guess who's the dog walker? You are. Or don't get
Yeah.
that breed.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point is like just realizing that we are like we have to realize that we're part of the problem to be able to address that we're part of the problem, if that makes sense. Instead of burying our head in the sand and saying, oh, this dog does this and that, and I hate it, and blah, blah, blah. We have to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what am I doing to contribute to it, and what can I do to change it, instead of just blaming the dog for everything.
Yes, 100%. And you know what? The reason I'm doing that is because that's literally parenting of any sort.
Yeah.
That's literally parenting of any sort. Our kids, our dogs, they react based on us, what we put out, the boundaries we set or don't set, the needs we meet or don't meet, the examples we set or don't set, right? So, like, if I'm like, acting crazy and completely unregulated, my dog is going to be, and my kid is going to be completely crazy and unregulated. I need to teach what I want for my children. I need to teach my dog to settle, right? Like, so many dogs, puppies don't know how to relax, and it's like they don't know how to do that because that's not normal for them. And like, you're gonna, you take them to the dog park, you want them to be wild there, you take them to your backyard, you want them to just relax while you have a beer, like, it looks the same to them. So you have to teach them these things. And one of the conversations I have with my husband all the time is he's kind of like military and like, this is right and this is wrong, and I'm like, your job is to teach them. They weren't born knowing that. Yeah. Like, I get that you understand that they shouldn't do that, because agreed, they shouldn't do that. But when did they learn not to do that? Like, we taught them not to cross the street without looking, right? We taught them that. But we didn't teach them to maybe, I don't know, make their bed.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been something we're teaching them. Where are they going to learn that if they're not learning it from us? So it's the same thing with our dogs. Like, if we're teaching them to, walk on a leash properly, they're not going to naturally know that. If we teach them to, not steal the food from the other dog in the house, then there might not be a fight over the food, right?
Yeah.
But we've got to teach them, we've got to manage it. And I think pet parents just want things to be easy. Just like parents, they just want it to be easy. And like, if anything, these numbers show that it's not easy, and that us not being proactive is making it worse.
Yeah.
Is leading to a place where then it becomes a lot harder to manage.
Oh, girl. Okay. I think
Well, thank you guys for joining us. It was awesome to talk passionately about another topic. We will see you next week. Next week is...
We're going to be in June next week.
June 3rd. OMG.
What?
June 3rd.
Crazy.
June 3rd. I know, I'm so slammed with work too. So this week I do have the CEO of Care Credit on the show. So tune in Thursday at 3 o'clock. We've been talking a lot about, finances. I know you had him on the show. So if you want to listen to something about Care Credit today, go check out the Parenting Reset. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have him on my show live on Thursday at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And then we'll see you next week, Tuesday the 3rd of June, for a conversation. We haven't decided what we're talking about yet.
No. Oh, I need to figure, I don't know. I need to go in my inbox. And that's what I do. I go through my inbox and I'm like, what looks good? Let me send this to her.
I listen to people talking in the pet industry and I say, Everybody's talking about money. Let's talk tariffs. Everybody's talking about this. Let's talk about it. Yeah, I haven't seen anything like really trending, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think people are getting really. I think people are already getting worn out this year. I really
Well,
do. I feel
well,
it.
especially like for me as a parent now, the school year is kind of
Yeah,
like that's
coming
kind of
to a
like I
close.
almost I almost operate on like 6 month periods now. So
Okay.
January to June is like one period, and then
Mm-hmm.
like August to December is another period, and like summer is like a break time for me. Thank goodness. I still work, but I still kind of like reduce my workload. And I do think that anybody who has like, even if you don't have kids, like kids in your family, like graduations and end of school activities and presentations and all the things that you have, like games and all the stuff that is happening. So I think people are kind of tired, but we've talked about pet sitting, we've talked about what to do. One thing I don't know that we've talked about is like boarding facilities. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
for boarding for cats. Maybe the pros and cons of boarding for cats, and like, because there are people who travel for a long period of time and maybe can't leave their cat alone. So maybe we can talk about boarding in some degree, because I'm a big believer in in-home pet care, but I recognize that it's not for everybody. So finding the right boarding facility is something I think pet parents really need to think about. I think also boarding options for your cat. There are trends now where there are really nice luxury boarding facilities for cats only, popping up all over the U.S. And that's a really good tool for people who are traveling long term or have like a social puppy that just wants more attention. So if you're
Wow.
cool with that, we can talk about something like that, since summer's coming and people are going to have to make decisions, if you haven't already, about your pets,
Yeah,
where your pet
you should
stays.
have made decisions about this months ago, but okay, let's
Yes,
talk about
yes,
it.
yes. Well, it depends on when you're leaving, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll talk about that. And
Let's do cat
then
boarding. Let's talk about cat boarding.
okay,
Yeah?
cool. Let's
All
do
right,
that.
awesome, guys.
It's a
Well, thanks
challenge.
for joining us again. We'll see you next week to talk about cat boarding. We got to give some love to the cat people out there, too.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely. All
guys.
right. Have a good week.
Bye.